Novak Djokovic just delivered the most perfectly executed psychological warfare I've seen in professional tennis in years. And the timing, the context, the way he's going about this whole Australian Open campaign, it's absolutely masterful. This isn't just a 38-year-old trying to relive his glory days. This is a calculating champion who knows exactly what he's doing, and Carlos Alcaraz better be paying attention. Let me paint the picture for you, because what happened on Monday night at Rod Laver Arena wasn't just Djokovic winning his first-round match. It was a statement, a declaration, a warning shot fired directly at Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner that basically said, "You guys might be dominating right now, but I'm still here, I'm still dangerous, and you're going to have to go through me if you want to keep winning Grand Slams." And the scary part? He looked like he absolutely meant it. The match itself was brutal in its efficiency. Pedro Martinez, ranked 71 in the world, got absolutely dismantled. 6-3, 6-2, 6-2. 2 hours of Djokovic showing the tennis world that reports of his decline have been greatly exaggerated. But it wasn't just that he won, it's how he won. 49 winners to 14. He gave up only 8 games total. He reached his 100th career victory at the Australian Open, becoming the first man in history to win 100 or more matches at 3 different Grand Slams. That's not just winning. That's making history while sending a message. And then came the press conference. Oh man, the press conference. Because this is where Djokovic really went to work. The journalists asked him the question everyone's been wondering. Can he actually beat Sinner or Alcaraz at this stage of his career? Can a 38-year-old stuck on 24 Grand Slams since the 2023 US Open really compete with the 2 guys who've won the last 8 majors between them? And Djokovic's response was absolutely perfect. He said, and I'm going to quote this directly because it's important, that when he's healthy, when he's able to put all the pieces of the puzzle together on a given day, he feels like he can beat anybody. That if he didn't have that self-belief and confidence in himself, he wouldn't even be there. Then he acknowledged the elephant in the room. He understands that Sinner and Alcaraz are playing on a different level right now from everybody else. That's a fact, he said. But then came the kicker. Just because they're playing at that level doesn't mean nobody else has a chance. And he likes his chances always, in any tournament, but particularly here in Melbourne. Let that sink in for a second. Particularly here, at the Australian Open, the tournament Djokovic has won 10 times, the tournament where he's now won 100 matches, the tournament where he feels most comfortable, most dominant, most like himself. He's not just saying he can compete, he's saying this is his house, and anyone who wants to win this title is going to have to take it from him. Now, some people might dismiss this as typical athlete bravado. Of course, Djokovic is going to say he believes he can win. What else is he supposed to say? But here's the thing. This isn't empty confidence. This is backed up by what we saw on Monday night. This is backed up by the fact that Djokovic reached the semifinals at all 4 Grand Slams in 2025. This is backed up by him beating Alcaraz in the quarterfinals of this very tournament last year before injury forced him out against Zverev in the semis. And let's talk about that Alcaraz match for a second because it's crucial context for understanding what's happening here. Last year, Djokovic outlasted Alcaraz in an absolute war of a quarterfinal. It was vintage Djokovic, using every bit of his experience and tactical brilliance to neutralize Alcaraz's explosive game. But the effort was so draining, so physically demanding, that Djokovic couldn't recover in time for the semifinal. His body broke down. He had to retire against Zverev. That was the moment when a lot of people started writing him off, saying he's too old, his body can't handle the grind anymore. But Djokovic clearly doesn't see it that way. In his press conference, he talked about taking time off to rebuild his body, about understanding that it takes more time to recover now than it did a few years ago. He pulled out of the Adelaide warm-up tournament last week specifically to make sure he was fresh for Melbourne. Everything he's doing is calculated. Everything is about maximizing his chances when it matters most. And what he's saying, without actually saying it, is that last year was a fluke. The injury was bad luck. When he's healthy and prepared properly, he's still capable of beating anyone. The way he dismantled Martinez should terrify the rest of the draw, because this wasn't Djokovic grinding out a tough four-setter against a lower-ranked opponent like he did in his last two Australian Open first rounds against Basavaredi and Prizmic. This was Djokovic playing the kind of complete, dominant tennis that made him the greatest hard-court player in history. His serve was clicking. 49 winners means he was going for his shots, playing aggressive tennis. His movement looked sharp. There were no signs of the physical issues that plagued him later in tournaments last year. And here's what makes this even more interesting. Djokovic is in the same half of the draw as Jannik Sinner. If both players win through, they'll meet in the semifinals. Sinner is the two-time defending champion. He's won 14 straight matches at the Australian Open. He beat Djokovic in the semis 2 years ago, on his way to his first Grand Slam title. Their head-to-head is 6-4 in Sinner's favour, and Sinner's won 5 of their last 6 meetings. On paper, Sinner should be the favourite in that potential semi-final matchup. But Djokovic is planting seeds of doubt. He's saying, look, I know what everyone thinks. I know Sinner and Alcaraz are the favourites. But I've been counted out before. I've been the underdog before. And I've proven over and over again that on a hard court, especially at the Australian Open, I'm still the most dangerous player in the world when everything's working. That's not just confidence. That's psychological warfare at the highest level. Think about what's going through Alcaraz's head right now. He's dealing with the Ferrero split, adjusting to life with just Samuel Lopez as his coach. He's got a blister on his finger that forced him to stop training. He's chasing the career Grand Slam at the one tournament that's eluded him. He's got all this pressure, all these distractions, all these challenges. And then here comes Djokovic, looking 28 instead of 38, crushing opponents, reaching historic milestones, and casually mentioning that he particularly likes his chances in Melbourne. That's got to be in Alcaraz's head, because Alcaraz and Djokovic are in opposite halves of the draw. If they both win through, they'll meet in the final, and Alcaraz knows better than anyone how dangerous Djokovic is in finals. Djokovic has won 24 Grand Slam titles. He's been in more big matches, more pressure situations than anyone in the history of the sport. He knows how to handle the moment. He knows how to execute when it matters most. The copycat serve situation adds another layer to this psychological chess match. Alcaraz has been working on a new serving motion that looks suspiciously similar to Djokovic's technique. And when Djokovic was asked about it, he didn't just acknowledge it. He turned it into a joke, saying he sent Alcaraz a message about copyrights, about needing to talk about a percentage of his winnings, about expecting a tribute for every ace Alcaraz hits. On the surface, it's funny. Djokovic being playful, showing his lighter side. But underneath, it's another message. It's Djokovic saying, "You're copying me because you know my technique works. You're trying to improve your serve by modeling it after mine." Which means you recognize that I've figured something out, that I have an advantage in that department. And now I'm watching you, seeing you try to replicate what I do, and I'm going to use that knowledge when we play. It's brilliant mind games disguised as banter. The historical context here is fascinating because we've seen this movie before. We've seen Djokovic written off, dismissed as too old or too injured or too far past his prime. And we've seen him come roaring back, proving the doubters wrong, winning Grand Slams when everyone said he was finished. He won the Australian Open in 2023 at age 35. He won the US Open later that year. He's been in the mix at every major since. This isn't a guy who's done. This is a guy who's been managing his body and his schedule specifically for moments like this. The 100 wins at the Australian Open milestone is significant beyond just the number. It represents 2 decades of dominance at this tournament. His first appearance here was in 2005. 21 years of coming to Melbourne and winning matches. 21 years of knowing the courts, the conditions, the atmosphere. There's a reason he calls Rod Laver Arena his favorite court in the world. There's a reason he said the achievement of reaching 100 wins here is a great motivation, particularly in the last 5 to 10 years of his career, because Djokovic knows his window is closing. At 38, he doesn't have many more chances at this. Maybe this year, maybe next year, if he stays healthy. But the clock is ticking. And that urgency, that awareness that time is running out, it doesn't make him desperate. It makes him focused. It makes him dangerous. Because Djokovic with nothing to lose, Djokovic playing with the freedom that comes from having already achieved everything there is to achieve, that's the scariest version of Djokovic. The draw setup couldn't be better for drama. Djokovic potentially facing Sinner in the semis. That's a rematch of their 2024 Australian Open semi-final that Sinner won. It's a chance for Djokovic to avenge that loss, to prove he can beat the defending champion. And if he does that, if he gets past Sinner, then he's in the final against either Alcaraz or Alexander Zverev. Either way, it's a massive match. Either way, it's a chance at history. The 25th Grand Slam title that would break his tie with Margaret Court for the most major singles titles ever. But Djokovic is being smart about managing expectations. He talked in his press conference about trying not to focus on what he's possibly achieving, but rather on what he's already achieved. 24 Grand Slams is not a bad number, he said. He has to appreciate that and remind himself of his amazing career. Release some of that unnecessary pressure. It's a now or never type of mentality that he doesn't feel is necessary. That kind of perspective, that ability to zoom out and see the bigger picture, it's what separates champions from everyone else. What I keep coming back to is how complete his performance looked against Martinez. This wasn't Djokovic relying on his returning and defense to grind out a win. This was Djokovic hitting 49 winners. This was Djokovic playing offensive tennis, taking the ball early, dictating points. There was one shot in particular, a leaping forehand winner in the third set, that looked like something Nick Kyrgios would hit. Pure athleticism, pure power. From a 38-year-old. That's not normal. That's special. The serve statistics tell the story of just how dialed in Djokovic was. He dropped only 5 points on serve the entire match. 5 points in 3 sets. That's absurd efficiency. That's the kind of serving performance you expect from a prime Federer or a peak Sampras, not from a 38-year-old in his first match after 2 months off. But that's what Djokovic does. He prepares meticulously, he shows up ready, and he executes. And now he's got Francesco Maestrelli in the second round, an Italian qualifier making his Grand Slam main draw debut. Another match Djokovic should win comfortably, another opportunity to fine-tune his game, to build momentum, to send more messages to the rest of the draw. With each passing round, with each dominant performance, the narrative shifts a little bit more from Djokovic being the old guy trying to hang on to Djokovic being a legitimate threat to win this tournament. The Sinner-Alcaraz duopoly that's dominated the last 8 Grand Slams is real. They've been the 2 best players in the world for the past 2 years. They've raised the level of men's tennis to new heights. But Djokovic reached the semifinals at all 4 majors last year. He was right there, knocking on the door. He lost 3 of those semifinals to Sinner and Alcaraz, yes. But he was competitive. He had his chances. And now he's coming into this Australian Open looking better, moving better, serving better than he did at any point last year. I think about Djokovic's comment about understanding that Sinner and Alcaraz are on a different level right now. He's not delusional. He's not pretending like he's still the dominant force he was 5 years ago. But he's also not conceding anything. He's acknowledging reality while also asserting that reality can change. That on any given day, when all the pieces come together, he's still capable of beating the best players in the world. And at the Australian Open, his favorite tournament, his most successful venue, those pieces are more likely to come together than anywhere else. The mental side of this cannot be overstated. Djokovic is one of the greatest champions in sports history. He's won in every possible scenario, under every possible pressure. When you're Alcaraz, 22 years old, trying to complete the career Grand Slam without your longtime coach. And you know that if you make the final, you might face Djokovic, a guy who's been there and done that dozens of times. That's intimidating, not insurmountably so. Alcaraz has beaten Djokovic before, but it's a factor. It's something that sits in the back of your mind. Same with Sinner. Yes, Sinner has beaten Djokovic 6 times in their last 7 meetings. Yes, Sinner beat him at this tournament 2 years ago. But Sinner also knows that Djokovic has been managing his body carefully, saving himself for the majors. Sinner knows that Djokovic at a Grand Slam is different from Djokovic at a regular tour event. The stakes are higher, the matches are longer, and Djokovic's experience becomes an even bigger advantage. What Djokovic is doing here is textbook champion behavior. He's controlling the narrative. He's setting the tone. He's letting everyone know that he's not here to make up the numbers or collect a paycheck or have one last hurrah. He's here to win. And the scary thing is, after watching him dismantle Martinez, after hearing the confidence in his voice, after seeing the way he's moving and playing, you have to take him seriously. The comparisons to his previous late career Grand Slam runs are inevitable. In 2023, at age 35, people thought he was done. Roger Federer had retired. Rafael Nadal was injury-prone and winding down. The Big Three era was supposed to be over, and Djokovic went out and won the Australian Open, the French Open, and the US Open. 3 majors in 1 year at 35 years old. Why? Because everyone underestimated him. Because everyone thought the young guys were ready to take over, and Djokovic used that as motivation. Now we're in a similar situation. The young guys, Sinner and Alcaraz, have taken over. They've won the last 8 majors. They're the present and the future of men's tennis. But Djokovic is still here, still winning matches, still reaching semifinals, still believing he can win. And that belief, backed up by 2 decades of excellence, makes him incredibly dangerous. There's also something poetic about Djokovic potentially facing Alcaraz in the final, because Alcaraz is trying to become the youngest man in the Open era to complete the career Grand Slam. He'd beat Nadal's record by 2 years. That's a huge deal. That's legacy-defining stuff. But standing in his way might be Djokovic, trying to win his 25th Grand Slam and break the all-time record. 2 champions, 2 generations, 2 massive milestones. The tennis gods couldn't script it better. The next 10 days are going to be fascinating to watch. Every match Djokovic plays, people are going to be looking for signs. Is he moving well? Is the serve holding up? Is he showing any physical wear and tear? Any hint of vulnerability will be pounced on. Any dominant performance will build the belief that he can actually do this. And with each round, the pressure on Sinner and Alcaraz grows. Because they're the favorites. They're the ones who are supposed to win. If they fall short, it's a failure. If Djokovic wins, it's a triumph against the odds. What struck me most about Djokovic's press conference was his comment about not praising Sinner and Alcaraz too much. He said it with a smile, teasing, but there was an edge to it, a sense of, yeah, they're great, but let's not crown them yet. Let's not forget about me. I'm still here. I'm still competing. I'm still winning. And maybe, just maybe, I've got one more magical run in me. That's the thing about champions. They don't go quietly. They don't fade away without a fight. Djokovic has been the most successful player at the Australian Open in history. He's won this tournament 10 times. He's reached 100 match wins here. This is his domain, his kingdom, and he's letting Alcaraz and Sinner know that if they want to rule this place, they're going to have to beat him first. The warning has been fired. The message has been sent. Novak Djokovic is healthy, he's confident, and he believes he can beat anybody. He particularly likes his chances at the Australian Open. And after what we saw on Monday night, after the way he dismantled Martinez, after hearing the conviction in his voice when he talks about his chances, I'm not betting against him. Because we've seen this movie before. We've seen Djokovic prove the doubters wrong. We've seen him win when everyone said he couldn't. Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner have been warned. The old lion still has teeth, and he's hungry for one more kill. The Australian Open just got a whole lot more interesting, because if Djokovic keeps playing like this, if he stays healthy, if everything comes together the way he believes it can, we might be witnessing the setup for one of the greatest Grand Slam finals in tennis history. Djokovic versus Alcaraz for the career Grand Slam and the 25th major. The young superstar trying to make history, the aging champion trying to extend his legacy, both with everything to prove, both with everything to lose. That's the kind of tennis that transcends the sport. That's the kind of match that people remember for decades. And it all starts with this warning, this message, this statement of intent from Novak Djokovic. I can beat anybody when I'm healthy. I like my chances, particularly here. Watch out, Carlos. Watch out, Jannik. The king isn't ready to abdicate his throne just yet.